Welcome to this explainer. Ever wonder how someone like Adolf Hitler actually rose to absolute power? I mean, it doesn't just happen by accident, right? Our source material today breaks down the exact psychological tools and structural methods used to brainwash millions and build the ultimate personality cult. We're going to look strictly at the data, the historical events, and the communication tactics outlined in the text to really understand the anatomy of a dictatorship. Let's get right into it. Okay, so here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the 3 tools of persuasion: eradicating logic and science, manufacturing fear, building a personality cult, some fascinating historical parallels, and finally, the ultimate solution. Section 1, the 3 tools of persuasion, or, as I like to call it, Aristotle's playbook. To really understand a dictator, we've got to understand how humans are persuaded in the first place. The source brings up Aristotle's 3 pillars of persuasion: ethos, logos, and pathos. And it's kind of wild to think about, but these ancient concepts are the exact same ones they teach in modern MBA advertising courses today. So ethos is all about authority. Like when an ad says 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this. Logos is logic, using hard data and facts to prove a point. And pathos, that's emotion. It's about making you feel something, like proud or nostalgic, to get you to take action. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine you're selling toothpaste. You can easily just use logos, right? You tell people to buy it because it has fluoride, and fluoride stops cavities. Boom, a totally logical transaction. But what if you're selling something with absolutely zero logical health benefits, like pan masala? You can't exactly use facts there. So the advertising leans entirely on pathos. They tell you that chewing it will make you a boss, or they tie it directly to your national pride. The whole strategy is just manipulating your emotions. And the source makes this really crucial point. A dictator is basically the Punjabi masala of politics. If voters only looked at pure economic data and logical outcomes, no one would ever vote to just surrender their democratic rights. No way. So, an aspiring dictator absolutely has to exploit pathos. They use emotional triggers like, hey, if you love your country, vote for me. Or if you respect the military, vote for me. It completely bypasses your logical brain. Moving on to Section 2, eradicating logic and science, the literal war on reason. See, just using emotion isn't enough. To get total control, a dictator has to actually wipe logic out of society. The source points to the literal destruction of logic, specifically May 10, 1933. On that day, Nazi officials publicly burned over 25,000 books. Anything that sparked free thought, books on democracy, psychology, foreign literature, works by Jewish authors, they labeled it un-German and just threw it into bonfires. They were intentionally destroying an intellectual framework that could challenge the state. And what's really fascinating here is how they spun it. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, actually justified replacing intellectualism with blind allegiance. He said, and I quote, "The future German man will not be just a man of books, but of character." They were literally pushing the narrative that pure reason was dangerous, and that stuff like blood, race, and nature should be your guide instead. So with logic completely out the window, total pseudoscience just flourished. University professors got replaced by party officials pushing stuff that defied basic physics. Like, get this, the source mentions the state-sponsored world ice theory. An inventor literally looked up at the moon, dreamed it was made of ice, and decided the entire universe was frozen. And because it rejected mainstream science, Hitler loved it. The state even gave the guy an honorary doctorate. It's like logic was completely inverted. And this anti-logic crusade really culminated in the severe persecution of Albert Einstein, arguably the world's most famous logical thinker. First, he criticized the regime and resigned from the Prussian Academy. The state media immediately started defaming him with baseless news and anti-Semitic cartoons. Then, propaganda posters went up saying he was not yet hanged, putting literal bounties on his head. Eventually, the greatest mind of the century had to flee to England, totally exiled from his own country. Which brings us to Section 3. Manufacturing fear and scapegoats. Once logic is suppressed, the next play in the book is to invent a terrifying fake enemy. Because, a fearful population is a compliant population. The source highlights the total suspension of logic here by listing the incredibly contradictory things the Jewish population was blamed for. They were blamed for losing World War I, even though 12,000 Jewish soldiers died fighting for Germany. They were blamed for the crashing economy and for the evils of capitalism. But then, when the Nazi Party started taking massive corporate funding, they suddenly pivoted and blamed the Jews for communism. It didn't even have to make sense. With total media control and crushing poverty, the terrified public just bought it. All right, Section 4, building a personality cult, creating the savior complex.
So now the public is terrified, right? This is when the dictator steps up as the absolute messiah, the sole cure to this manufactured disease. The source points out that Hitler actually secretly wrote his own praise to artificially build the savior complex. There was a 1923 biography comparing Hitler to Jesus Christ. Turns out, Hitler wrote it himself, using a friend's name. And his book, Mein Kampf, riddled with fabrications, like his claims about growing up doing hard physical labor, which was totally untrue. The whole persona was just a carefully crafted fake.
This cult of personality got so extreme that they literally removed the actual name of the political party from election ballots. In the 1930s, the ballot just said the Hitler movement. Voters weren't choosing a platform anymore. The man and the state had become exactly the same thing in the eyes of the law.
Now, you might think it was just fear driving this machine, but buying off the puppet media takes serious cash. The source notes that this propaganda machine was heavily bankrolled by major corporations practicing crony capitalism. We're talking big names providing massive funding: Volkswagen, BMW, Kodak, Siemens, Nestle, Fanta, and Ford. The media wasn't just intimidated, it was heavily financed by corporate interests that directly aligned with the dictator.
Next up, Section 5, Historical Parallels of Superiority, Echoes in Time.
The explainer source then zooms out to show how these exact same tactics of claiming superiority echo across history. These aren't just isolated one-offs. For example, the text draws a strict distinction between Hinduism, which it describes as a religious philosophy of internationalism that views the world as one family, and V.D. Savarkar's Hindutva. According to the source, Hindutva is a political ideology based on superiority and exclusion. It sets up a pure in-group and labels others as outsiders, which very much mirrors those 1930s European tactics.
And here's an incredibly striking parallel from the source. Remember Hitler's fake biography we just talked about? Well, there was a highly complimentary book called Life of Barrister Savarkar, authored by someone named Chitragupta. But in 1987, the publisher officially revealed that Chitragupta was actually a pen name used by Savarkar himself. According to the source, the methodology for artificially inflating your own mythos is just remarkably consistent across the board. And the source makes sure to note that this isn't isolated to one region. We see these global superiority complexes everywhere, from M.S. Golgawar's appreciation of Nazi ideology to exclusionary movements pushed by Iranian dictators to Chaudhry Rahmat Ali in Pakistan pushing narratives against minorities. The geography changes, but the playbook of manufacturing a superior in-group is exactly the same.
Finally, Section 6, Logic over Blind Following, the ultimate solution. After deconstructing all this manipulation, what's the actual takeaway for us today? How do we defend ourselves? Well, the source leaves us with a really powerful quote from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Do not become a blind follower of any party or any politician. It's a stark reminder that our only real defense against emotional manipulation is to let logic have the upper hand. The moment we let pathos override logos, when we let pride or fear bypass our need for actual facts, we leave the door wide open for authoritarianism. So, think about the media you consume every single day. Are you going to let facts or feelings drive your decisions? Next time you hear a political speech, really ask yourself, are you being sold logic or are you just buying the panchran masala? Is this person giving you real data and addressing reality, or are they just pulling on your emotional strings? Keep your logic sharp and never stop questioning. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.